Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Ellen Duggan, if you don't know me. I'm the district nurse leader and the wellness coordinator. I'm so glad that you're here this evening for the second session of Raising Resilient Kids with Karrie Toole. For those of you that were here last week, welcome back. For those of you that weren't and you're joining us for the first time, we're really glad you're here. The recording for last week's presentation, if you haven't seen it, is available on the website. It is linked to the flyer for this week with the first one. So I will make sure that Mr. Martineau sends it out tomorrow with his update. We hope to see all of you back again next Thursday for our third and final session. So we are all here so that we can learn more about what to do when you don't know what to do. We've all been there. We'll all continue to be there, even when your kids are grown and 30 and have kids of their own. You're going to learn something here. So what we as a district have learned from the many surveys and screenings that we've done, and anecdotally by what we all see, that our children's mental health and wellness needs to be an area of focus for all of us. We need to help our students and children learn to develop the skills and strategies to help support them as they deal with feelings of stress, anxiety, depression, and the challenges of emotional regulation, self-awareness, and self-regulation. Karrie Toole is with us again. She came back this evening to enlighten us to new ways to help strengthen and build up our skills as the caring adults in our children's lives. Having a caring adult in their life, at school or at home, is the single most important protective factor for a child. And just by being here tonight, you're showing us that you are a caring adult. Karrie is the Executive Director of Castlebrook Counseling Services. She's an independently licensed clinical social worker who specializes in DBT with adolescents and adults. Karrie is an engaging, highly empathetic, and energetic speaker who will provide us with some supportive and solution-oriented tips and positive coping strategies as we promote and build healthy, supportive relationships with our children. Before I hand the mic over to Karrie to enlighten us all, I'd like to thank the Southborough Health Department, Dr. Heather Alker, who's here with us this evening, and Assistant Director, Public Health Nurse Taylor West, for being the caring adults in our lives and making these presentations possible. So here you go, Karrie. Everything we wanted to know.
Thank you. That's sure about enlightening. I mean, I'll do the best I can. So welcome back. Who was here last week? Yay! Oh, good. Now I think I gave you guys some homework, right? So today we're going to talk about there's no such thing as a bad emotion, okay? That we are all doing the best we can as parents with the skills that we were taught as kids, and that works great with the vast majority of kids. And if your kid has a superpower, you're often going to see a lot of backfire from that. So we're going to talk about how to approach kids with the superpower differently. And again, if you remember from last week, pretty much all of them, as soon as they hit puberty, they're going to have a superpower. So time to buckle up. So, and I'll give really concrete skills and suggestions about how to approach some of these things. I'm going to talk about a bunch of different landmines that we as parents accidentally detonate with our kids with the best of intentions. We're trying to help, we're trying to make things better for them, and then you've had those situations where you're like, I'm trying to help, and then your kid all of a sudden like explodes at you and you're like, what did I say, right? I'm going to tell you what those landmines are so you can look for them next time and approach them differently. Okay? Yay. So the homework, how'd it go from last week? Did people start taking the word but out of their vocabulary for those high sensitivity kids? Yeah, I see nods. How'd it go? How'd it go? Thumbs up. Yeah. Thumbs up. Thumbs up. Yay. Any Any so-sos? Yeah. It's going to take, to just see that shift in 1 week is huge, right? So keep at it, stay consistent with it. And, because a lot of the times if the kids see us as a, not necessarily a trigger, but a person where they're often, have some big emotions based on interactions with us, it's gonna take a while. Remember that slow return to baseline, right? That high sensitivity kids have. It's gonna take a while for them to kind of say, oh wait, my parents are doing something different. What's going on here? And at first they're gonna say, this is weird. Why are you being weird? Stop being weird, right? And that's okay. And you're gonna say, I'm just gonna try a new thing, and it's gonna be weird for a little bit. We'll adjust. Right? So I love just putting it right out there for the kids, like, I'm trying something different. It's going to be awkward. Let's get comfortable with being awkward, right? Which my kids find totally cringy, but we're going with it. All right? Taking the word should out. People work on that. Yep, no shoulding on our kids. Get it, right? No shoulding on ourselves, right? Good. Taking out the word understand. That one's a hard one, right? And it is such a really inflammatory word for a lot of kids, because they're like, you don't understand, and they're right? So how did everybody do with checking their own system before they engage with their kids? I see nods. Did it help? You had a much different interaction because you got yourself into a calm place first, right? You don't have to fix it right away. You don't have to fix it at all, actually. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the more you're able to bring yourself down, the easier it's going to be to not be as vulnerable yourself when the kids are going to throw those verbal barbs at you because they're supposed to, because they're kids and that's their job, right? We're the safe people in their lives. Yay, that's so wonderful, right? It's not always a fun time for us. All right, did we help them name their emotions? Right? I feel sad. I feel nervous. I feel embarrassed, right? Did we give them the language? Did we hand them our phone and say, pick an emoji? Right? That's actual emotions there, not just bad or good. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. And how people do with just asking more prompting questions. Yeah? Yeah? Good. And how'd the conversation go? Better. Yeah, you get more information, right? Very cool. And were your kids like, you're being weird? Yeah. Awesome. Blame me, it's okay. I'm totally fine with it. Very cool. Awesome. Yay, everybody gets an A. Fantastic. Okay, so today we're going to talk about why things backfire, right? And we've all been in this situation. We're trying to support our kids, we're trying to nurture them, we're trying to help them figure out what to do with their emotions, what to do with the situation, and then they rip our heads off, right? Or they storm out of the room and slam their doors. And we're like, well, I'm just trying to help, right? So we're accidentally, hitting a soft spot in them. And again, if you have a kid with a high sensitivity, there's a lot of soft spots that we accidentally set off, right? So, we talked a little bit last week about the kids with the superpower hear things differently than kids who are typically wired, right? The buts feel like a stab to the heart. The shoulds feel like the shame and the blame that come when they hear that word, right? They hear it differently than other kids do, right? So just being able to be cognizant of the language that we're using with high sensitivity kids is going to make a huge impact, right? And our worries get in the way when things backfire because we're like, oh no, what if I say the wrong thing? Oh no, what if I say something and then they go out and they punch the wall or they harm themselves, right? There are all kinds of, worries that we have that, if my kid gets really, really upset, and they seem to get upset at me a lot, so am I part of the problem here, right? I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, right? So our worries get in the way of us being effective, right? And then sometimes we under-respond because we're trying to not make it worse, but then sometimes we over-respond because we've hit our limit, right? So how do we kind of do that on a consistent basis? And we want our kids to be happy. But guess what? They're not going to be all the time, right? I take out the phrase of when I talk to my kids about, what my hopes are for them and how I hope they navigate the world. I purposely say I don't say I want you to be happy, because that's a setup, right? How many points in our day are we truly, truly happy, right? It's too big of a lift sometimes. Contentment. I want them to aim for contentment, for calm, for peace, for comfort, right? So sometimes the narrative or the expectation from people in their world that, okay, I should be happy. What's wrong with me that I'm not happy, right? So we'll talk about that in a little bit too. Okay. So landmine number 1 that happens with us as parents, the things that we set off by accident. We don't want our kids to feel bad, right? So we're going to talk in a little bit about that word bad when it comes to emotions. But it's also torture for us to watch our kids struggle with painful emotions, right? When we see them hurting, it's like anguish for us, isn't it? Right? So our discomfort leads to us kind of going in to try to take care of them and their discomfort, which is a nurturing, comforting thing to do. That's fantastic. We want to do that as parents, right? And sometimes they misinterpret that as, whoa, you've got a lot going on, parents, and clearly my emotions are bringing something out in you. And so sometimes they might hear it as bright-siding. Sometimes we're looking to cheer them up. Like, oh, but look at it this way. But what about this? Right? Which is great perspective taking. It is when you have a fully formed frontal lobe. Right? They don't. Right? So sometimes we're helping them to see perspectives, look at the bright side, look at what happened as a result. Good for you. I'm so proud. And, we can be positive and all this, right? And they are kind of sitting with this perception that their emotions are too much or are inconvenient, right? So they'll sometimes hear from the parent, child, your emotions are making me uncomfortable, right? That's the message they hear. It's not what we're intending. It's not what we're trying to do. The typically wired kids, that doesn't even cross their mind, right? The high sensitivity kids are looking to us about the normalization of their emotional experience. And if we run in trying to say, don't feel bad, we'll fix it, we'll get, these emotions out of the way, they're hearing that there's something wrong with their emotions. And there's not something wrong with their emotions. All right? Does that make sense? Yeah? So what we want to do is, my favorite thing, embrace discomfort. We're going to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Gross. That's cringy, as my kids say. Right? But to be able to show them that discomfort is supposed to happen, right? When something's going on for us. Discomfort's a signal to us that we need to pay more attention to something, right? Discomfort, you walk down the hallway, you stub your toe on something, right? That pain is trying to tell you to, walk a little more gingerly, or if you broke your toe, you gotta rest it or something. And if you ignore that pain, right, and tough it out and say, I'm fine, I can be happy, right? You're going to get gangry and your jaw's going to fall off, right? We have to pay attention to the pain and to, there it is, okay, good. We have to pay attention to those things, all right? So embrace it. How we do that is we sit with our kids and we say, oh, this is really uncomfortable, isn't it? This is such a bummer. What a disappointment. This is really scary. And then just sit in it. Don't do anything. Just feel it. Because what you're showing them is that uncomfortable emotions aren't a bad thing, right? They're supposed to be there to teach us things, right? And we're also used to being like, oh no, I don't want to feel that. Let's fix it, right? And so they're going to start to learn to be fearful of their emotions. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. All right, let them feel it and offer reassurance, right? Offer that comfort. Sit with them in the emotion, right? So if they hear a message that we want them to kind of like feel better quickly, we don't want them to feel bad, they're going to withhold from us when they do feel painful emotions, because they're going to get a message that either we don't want to hear it, or we're uncomfortable with it, or we don't know what to do with it, or it's setting us off in some way. So the more that we can sit with them as they're experiencing their emotions, and even share our emotions of, oh gosh, it's so painful for me to see you go through this and have these emotions. This really sucks for the whole situation, right? It shows them that you can handle it as the parent, and they won't fragilize you when things are really, really problematic and really, really painful, right? Does that make sense? Yes? Awesome. All right. Landmine number 2. Oh, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. Okay. There's no such thing as a bad emotion, right? So if you ask your kid, and they're upset, what's going on? How do you feel? And they say, I feel so bad, right? Or even us using our language. Oh, I felt so bad about that. Oh, I felt so bad about the thing that happened earlier, blah, 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 whatever, right? When we label our experience as bad, doesn't that give a connotation that it's wrong to be feeling that way? Right? You see what I'm saying? Right? So, in the whole development of the emotion part of the brain, there's lots of different emotions that are really, really painful. Right? In various ways. Lots of emotions that are really painful and really uncomfortable, right? Anxiety, sadness, shame, anger, right? Those aren't pleasant. And they're really, really important. They're teaching us something about our experience, right? They're not bad. They're trying to help, right? So with my clients, I talk a lot about painful emotions are that friend who tells it like it is to you, right? They have your best interests at heart, and they're not going to BS you. They're going to tell it like it is, right? And you don't want to hear it in the moment, and you think that they're so mean for saying the thing, right? And it's what you really needed to hear sometimes, right? The emotions are the exact same thing. They're going to be painful. They're going to be uncomfortable, because that's what it takes in the human brain to alert to something that is not going according to plan in some way, right? Just like the injury to your foot means pay attention to your foot. There's something wrong here, right? The emotion of, pain or anger or sadness is in the brain saying like, hey, red flag, pay attention to this, right? We got to take a look at what's going on here, right? Make sense? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're not using terminology about painful emotions that would cause a kid to get a message that we shouldn't feel them, right? Negative is another descriptor that I take right out of my vocabulary in talking about painful emotions, right? They're not negative emotions. They're painful. They're uncomfortable. Absolutely, 100%. They're not bad. They're trying to help, They just like to scream sometimes at trying to help, right? And if you have a high sensitivity kid, their emotions don't whisper to them. I see yes. They do not. My emotions do not whisper to me. My emotions get one of these mics and a loudspeaker on top of it and scream at the top of their lungs. And I had to learn, right, and probably some people in here had to learn how to kind of take a step back and say, okay, emotions, I hear what you're saying. Time to tone it down a little bit, but message received, right? One of the most powerful interventions I do with my clients when we're talking about making friends with our emotions, because they're trying to help us, they're just really loud at doing it, right, is to thank them. Thank you, shame. Shame's my favorite emotion. Yay, Brene Brown. It's not my favorite one to feel, because ew, right? But it's my favorite one because it's so powerful. Shame tells us when something's going on that doesn't align with our values, right? So that's something to really, really attend to pay attention to, because you're learning about yourself, right? This is what we can teach the kids, right? If you're feeling ashamed, holy crap, isn't that great information? That is great information. We have a lesson to learn here that our emotions are trying to teach us, right? So let's hear them. Let's hear what they have to say. They might be a little salty about it, right? But they're trying to give you a lesson, right? So we're going to make friends with those emotions and thank them. Thank you, anxiety, for trying to help me plan ahead. Thank you, anger, for showing me that something doesn't feel right here, right? Something feels unjust. Every emotion has a purpose. Emotions evolved in the human brain before language did, right? So they are in there. We're not going to be able to think our emotions, right? I have so many clients that come in, and they might come into therapy, and they're talking about an experience they had, and they're like in their heads about, well, I thought this was going on, and I had to worry about this, and I remembered this, and I'm judging my emotions, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and I'm like, hold on. You're trying to think your emotions, right? So let's put the brakes on. What's the emotion you were feeling? You were feeling anger. All right, let's just feel it. No words. Just feel it, right? And they're really uncomfortable. And I do the classic, the therapeutic silence thing, right? That they teach us in grad school and therapy school, right? And let them sit in their emotions for a little bit. And then a couple minutes later, they go, yeah, right? Because they stop trying to run away from their emotions. They let the emotion tell them what they needed to hear, right? Make sense? Yeah? Okay, and they're gonna get louder, right? If we plug our ears and say, la, 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 I'm not gonna listen to your emotion. Nope, I don't wanna feel that way. Nope, I'm fine. Guess what they're gonna do? They're gonna come chasing after us and get louder and louder and louder, right? It's kind of like that argument that you might have with someone at home, perhaps, right? Where, and it goes both ways. When one person isn't feeling heard, what do? They get louder. Or they start repeating themselves. Does anyone have a repeater at home? Yep, it's because they're not feeling heard. Does anyone have like a yeller at home? The volume goes up? It's because they're not feeling heard, right? So if we tell them, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying X, Y, Z, even if it makes 0 sense, right? If you just repeat it back to them, they're going to feel heard, then the volume and the repetition's going to come down. But guess what? The emotions are going to do the same thing. If our emotions aren't feeling heard by us, they're going to repeat themselves, and they're going to get louder, right? And they're going to build and build and build until what you might see with your kids is like a complete and utter meltdown, because they're trying to stuff it and not feel it and try to be okay. Right? And I'm so grateful that there's this narrative out there right now that it's okay to not be okay. right? And so I'm just kind of sprinkling that in at my house all the time. I'm like, hey, it's okay to not be okay, right? Just plant those seeds now, right? So a lot of these skills I equate to, and I think I had this on a slide somewhere. You don't wait until the boat is sinking to try to learn how to swim. So don't wait until you're already in a heightened state with your kid when you're in a crisis to try to apply some of these, right? You got to do your swimming lessons in advance so that when the crisis comes, you've already got some strategies in place, right? See what I'm saying? Yeah. Okay. So when kids think that emotions are bad or negative, they describe their own emotions as bad or negative, they're going to become fearful of their emotions, right? I have so many clients coming in, that high-performing, very anxious kids, and they are scared of their own emotional experience because they think it's wrong, right? What's wrong with me that I have all this anxiety, right? What's wrong with me that I have this sadness? I shouldn't feel this way, right? So they become fearful of their fear, right? So when we try to normalize it and say, hey, let's make friends with that fear. Let's make friends with that shame. Let's make friends with that anger. What's it trying to say to you? Then they're going to not have that panic instinct to shut down the emotions, right? They'll be able to say, okay, let's feel what we're feeling, because that's going to tell us something. Right? And that's a game changer for a lot of kids coming in when we remove the fear of the emotion. The emotion's not bad. It's not a bad thing, right? Painful, not bad. All right? So some of the things that we want to do in your own language, when you're talking about your emotions, when you're talking about somebody else's emotions, when you're talking about an emotion about someone on the street or at the grocery store, right? Take out the word bad, take out the word negative, replace it with painful or uncomfortable. Okay? So you're going to take that judgment lens of an emotional experience out of the mix for your kids, right? My favorite phrase with my clients and with my own kids, what do you think that feeling's trying to tell you? Right? What's your emotion trying to say? And that's a huge game changer for a lot of kids and adults, right? And I'll do that to myself. I'll be like, holy crap, I've got a lot of feelings in here. Okay, all right, what's my emotion trying to tell me, right? And that helps me then be more effective as a parent or as a therapist, a friend, etc., right? So I said this already, bad is not an emotion. Right? If they can't name their emotion, like I said earlier, have them look at their phones or show them your phone with all the emojis, right? The emojis are really, really, really useful. Remember how messed up texting was before the emojis came along? We pissed off so many people accidentally with the best of intentions because you can't, there's no emoji for snark, right? Or joking before we put in the semicolon and the parentheses. That was whole new world, right? So the emotions communicate so much more, right? If anyone is in communications, you'll know that the words that we use are only 7% of communication. 7% of communication, right? All other parts of communication are your nonverbals, your tone, your pace, your volume, right? All your body position, all these things that are part of the nonverbal side of communication, right? So it's not just about the words, it's about the whole package, all right? So the emojis help communicate that. I've had whole conversations with family members just in emojis and memes. It's been fantastic, right? And last thing, feelings are not facts. So this one takes a lot for some of my clients and my own kids to kind of get comfortable with, that just because you feel it doesn't mean it's true, right? You can feel scared about something, without it actually being dangerous, right? And so we can have the fear, we can normalize the emotional experience and know that the data isn't there to actually support that, but that doesn't mean your emotion's wrong. It's just one of those things where the emotion is screaming, right? And might be reading into a situation. Lots of kids with anxiety, their emotion, there's danger everywhere, right? There isn't danger everywhere, but their brain is just so highly tuned to it that that's what they're gonna kind of look for. All right? Okay. Landmine number 3. Okay, so this is something we do with the best of intentions, completely accidentally. We end up negating our kids' experience of their emotions in some of the ways that we try to comfort and help them think things through and give them perspective, right? Again, their brains aren't there yet to really be able to take perspective. So we're trying to teach them how they hear it. Again, typically wired kids are probably like, oh yeah, I never saw it that way. You know, the high sensitivity kids, it comes across in a whole different way, right? So sometimes, you know, in our moments of frustration, we might say something to our kids, or they get from the world, you're too sensitive, right? Kind of, you know, having some blame or judgment about the kid's experience with their own emotions, that there's something wrong with what they're feeling, right? And they'll take that on, that there's something wrong with me, right? So we're negating their experience of their emotions by saying what you're feeling is wrong, right? So we want to address that. It's not that big a deal, right? We do this all the time. It's not that big a deal. It's okay. It's okay. It's not that big a deal, right? But to them, it actually is a really big deal. So us saying to them, it's not a big deal, when they say it is a big deal, is us negating their experience, right? That we're telling them with the best of intentions, coming from a wonderful place, they're hearing that their emotions are wrong. They're hearing that their perspective is wrong. Not what we're saying. This is not what we're saying, right? It's how they're hearing it because of their superpower, right? You shouldn't feel depressed. You have everything. They know. They know they have all kinds of wonderful resources and supports, right? And they're still feeling what they're feeling, right? So oftentimes they will internalize that. If there's something wrong with me, right? Do you think they really meant that? So sometimes this is in like the social conflict stuff with peers, and we're trying to show them perspective. We're trying to show them, okay, what do you think Johnny felt when this happened? Right? We're trying to get them to think outside themselves. The high sensitivity kids will hear that we're on the other kid's side. Oh, I see nods. We've had that debate, right? We're trying to show them perspective. We're trying to show them that it's not just how they experienced it, right? They're not there yet. We'll get there, right? They need to run through their experience and get validation for it, even if it's completely off the wall, right? Have them kind of go through the whole process of what they experienced. Then the emotions will come down. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a second. And then when things are kind of, you know, the emotions have come down a little bit, then we can kind of say, you know, this is the Columbo routine, my favorite thing, play dumb. You know, it just crossed my mind. What if Johnny actually had this thought in mind? What do you think of that? Right? But you can't do that when they're escalated, because they're going to be like, you're just picking his side. You don't understand. Why don't you ever take my side? Sound familiar? Right? So being able to wait it out, right? And let them have their perspective until it kind of runs out of gas. Right? We'll come back. We have a fully formed frontal lobe. We can hold on to that information, right? We'll circle back, but we need to get them to come down first. All right? So, what to do? Reflect. Reflecting back to them some of what the emotion is, some of what their statements are, right? So I'm hearing you say, the sky is made of orange cupcakes, right? We know it's not, but we just need to reflect to them what we heard from them, okay? It's probably not gonna make sense, and that's okay. They just need to get it out, right? So reflect it back. You know, there's a little bit of, being able to dig a little bit deeper, and we're gonna talk really specifically about these techniques next week when we talk about validation techniques. This is really upsetting to you, huh? Right? Just to let them know you see. You see what their emotions are, and they don't have to make sense, right? That sounds really painful. That's a good one. It makes sense that you feel that way, right? If you take nothing else from tonight, that statement, it makes sense that you feel that way, right? All right, so be careful about negating their experience, right? Don't tell them what they should feel or that what they're feeling is too much or not all right. My husband does this all the time. I told him already earlier tonight, I'm just gonna throw him under the bus all night tonight. And he's like, okay, he's used to it. So this is something he does all the time to my kids, right? They're on their video games. He says, okay, time to get off. They're like, we don't want to. And he says, well, you should be happy. You got 3 hours of video games, right? So he's negating. My son's like, whatever. My daughter's like, but, right? So he's negating their experience of their upset, their frustration at having to get off the video games. You should feel happy, right? So see what I'm saying there about negating? Yeah, so be careful with that one. All right. What happened? Oh, there it is. Okay, landmine number 4. It's a landmine. Oh, you know what? It's probably that YouTube situation. Okay, hang on. Hold, please. Okay, so this is landmine number 4, trying to fix the problem. Have people seen this video? It's not about the nail? No? Oh, one person had, a couple of people have. Yeah. It's only like a minute and a half. It's fantastic. Yeah. All right. So this is trying to fix the problem before we're ready. Oh. Sound's not working. Try again.
Yep.
Nope. It was working earlier. Let me know when ready. Oh no!
Should work. It's so weird. Can you unplug it and plug it back in?
Unplug the cable here?
Yeah.
Let's try. That's what my husband always says. First unplug everything, turn it down, turn it off, reboot it. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna narrate. There's just all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it. It's like literally, I feel it in my head. And it's relentless, and I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have...
Hang on. I don't know what's happening. All right. Well, plot twist. All right. Well, she talks about how she has this nail in her head. Well, she has this pain, and he's trying to fix it to say, well, if we just took the nail out of your head, Nope, still no. Okay. If we just took the nail out of your head, everything would be better. And she's like, you're not listening to me. Right? You're just trying to fix it. You're not really hearing what I have to say. I don't want you to fix it. Right? And how many times have we had that argument at home? Stop trying to fix the problem. Right? So you can go onto YouTube, search for It's Not About the Nail, enjoy it at your own leisure, right? So, oh my gosh. All right. So I'm trying to fix the problem. This is the problem, right? To sit with the discomfort, right? That's the thing. We're trying to fix it. It's okay if we're uncomfortable. We can handle it, right? We don't want to minimize, I'll advance it in a second. Right? We don't want to minimize the effort it takes to feel differently. Sometimes that sounds like, oh, just do this. Or if you do that, we'll be okay. Right? Even sometimes going to therapy, or even sometimes, just go to bed. You're really, really tired. Just go to bed. Right? It's minimizing the effort it takes to feel differently.
I'm hearing you say that you're upset with the technology.
Well done, sir. It's okay to feel that way. I feel so validated in my emotions, right? And we're not just going to try to fix it. We're going to be able to sit with it and say, yes, there's discomfort here. When we race to try to fix the problem for them, they're getting that message again that their discomfort's wrong, or it's bad, or we should make it go away because there's something wrong with feeling uncomfortable. Right? By trying to fix the problem too quickly, right? So this might be, the kid who, they start feeling anxious and then they freak out because they want the anxiety to go away and the anxiety's not going away. Make it go away, Mom. Make it stop, right? And you're frantic because you're trying to make it stop, right? We're trying to fix the problem. The problem isn't the anxiety, right? It's okay to just feel anxious and not know where it comes from. Sometimes the amygdala just has a dance party. Right? Especially with kids, especially once they hit puberty. It just goes a little haywire in there. That's what happens, right? So what we want to be cautious of is if we're trying to fix the problem or we're trying to tell them how to fix their problem, we're telling them how to fix their problem our way, right? And they are not little miniatures of us. They have to figure out in their own systems what is the most effective way to solve their problems, right? So we can sit with them in it and say, okay, let's talk about what the options are. Let's just feel what's going on. What's your system telling you, right? And that's going to help them figure out what's the most effective way for them to solve their problem. It may take longer than you wish it would. You may be able to see the writing on the wall and be like, just do the thing, right? But they need to figure it out on their terms. Otherwise, they're going to look to us to say, oh gosh, what do I do here, right? And forever, if we say, just do this, just do that, just do this, right? And they're like, okay, and they just do it our way, but it's not authentic to them. So they'll never really look at their own experience and say, okay, what's my system trying to tell me, until we teach them to do that, right? So if we keep jumping in and trying to fix it for them on their behalf, sometimes we have to. Absolutely, the situation calls for it, right? For smaller things, let them sit in it, right? My younger kiddo is having a little social dust up right now, and in my head I'm like, just move to the different cafeteria table. Right? Just do it. But if I tell him to do that, he's going to skip over a lot of the building of the analytical part of the brain to say, what are my options? Right? He's got to figure that out for himself. And he did. Yay! Right? So, sit with the discomfort, what to do with this landmine. Teach them to check in on their own values and problem solve their way. And it shows them that you trust them to cope with their own emotions, right? If we run in to try to fix every problem, they're going to get this interpretation that, oh, my family doesn't think I can handle being overwhelmed. My family doesn't think I can handle being upset. They're just going to try to fix it for me. So they think I'm fragile. I must be fragile. So it's a term we call fragilizing, right? And they end up getting fragilized against their own emotional experiences, right? And they get kind of stuck, right? So we're teaching them that we can let them sit in their discomfort, even though it's so uncomfortable. Yay! All right, back to business. Okay, Tube, blame the YouTube. All right, another landmine that we have, timing. When the emotions are here, don't try to fix it, right? For the reasons we just talked about. The message they're going to get is that, oh no, this is too much. I shouldn't feel these things. Make it stop, make it stop. Ah! It won't stop, right? And then they become fearful of their emotions, right? So you can see it coming oftentimes, not always, right? But oftentimes we can see the emotions coming, and then they hit this, there's this switch that flips, right? We've all seen it, right? Where all rationality leaves the room, right? And we're just left with this giant ball of emotion, right? Been there, okay? So when we're here, right, and we start panicking, because, oh my God, it's a lot, and it is, we start panicking, we're like, oh my God, we gotta shut it down, we gotta put the lid on, make it stop, right? We gotta fix the problem, because they're in pain. And, you know, it's torture for us to see our kids in pain. It is, right? So the thing that, and we go to trying to fix the problem, trying to look for the why. Why is this happening? Why do you feel that way? How come this happened? Like, where did it come from? Oftentimes there is no why, right? Oftentimes it comes out of the blue. How many times have you asked your kid, well, where's this coming from? And they're like, I don't know, right? They don't. They don't know. They're still trying to figure out that part of their brain, right? Remember when they hit a growth spurt and then they were all gangly in their bodies because they couldn't, you know, their brain and their body weren't connected anymore, right? That's the exact same thing that's happening in terms of the emotions. They don't know they don't know where the boundaries are with their emotions. It's all just wild, wild west in there sometimes, right? And it's gonna look like that, right? So for a while, this bar might be like way down here, right? Where they flip into these emotions a lot. So, and that's where the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, where the emotions are in the driver's seat, and we're going on fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Those are the 4 Fs for the sympathetic nervous system. We've all heard fight or flight, right? Yep. And that's where the brains are just like, there's no logical process that's happening right there, right? It's all emotion-based. Freeze is the 3rd one. Have people seen that? Freeze, yeah. If you haven't, go look up the YouTube videos. Obviously, I can't do it now. Of fainting goats, where you scare them and they go, ah, and fall over. It's cute and like, you know, a little painful at the same time, right? And then the parasympathetic nervous system. So if they get into the sympathetic nervous system and we fix the problem for them, they're not gonna learn how to downregulate, right? And that problem solving, figuring things out, needs to happen when we're over here, when we can think things through. And the logical part of our brains come back online, right? When we're in sympathetic nervous system, we talked about this last week, the amygdala and the frontal lobe are not talking to each other, right? We're just going on instinct alone, right? So we need to get that frontal lobe back online, bring them down. So how we do that? Oh, emotional judo. This is one of my favorite things. I don't think we talked about this last week. So I like to practice something I call emotional judo. So I took a lot of martial arts when I was younger, and in a Shotokan style. So it's a very an Ishinryu. So it's very like you go on a war, right? So I would go to the classes, and there was a lot of practicing, and I would end up in bruises, and I'm a delicate flower as you can see. And so I would get bruises on my arms and legs all the time. So it's very kind of hand-to-hand combat. Whereas with judo, right, you are taking your opponent's energy and you're flipping it and guiding it and, you know, directing it in a different way, and then they land on their butt. It's kind of fun, right? So what we do with our kids is when we're doing that clash sometimes of like, oh my gosh, no, you need to stop feeling that way. You're being so dramatic, da, 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 right? We're doing that hand-to-hand combat, and everybody's going to end up bruised, right? So I like to use the term emotional judo. When they're coming at you hot, right? They're coming on full blast, and we're the receiving end of that, and it's not a good time, right? But for us to be able to say, to deflect it instead of like squaring up and being like, well, you need to tone it down, right? Because if we try to like come in as the heavy, it's gonna backfire, right? So if we come in and say like, whoo, you're really mad about that, right? It goes, we are sidestepping the anger and validating it on the way by, and they're gonna be like, yeah. Or they might kind of yell and scream for a little bit longer. That's okay, keep doing it, right? You're really heated, this is really intense. You're in a lot of pain, right? That's showing them that, you know, it's, while it's being directed at you, it's not about you. And even if it is about you, it's not about you. They're trying to figure out their brains, right? And we're not gonna problem solve, even if it is a conflict between you and them, we're not gonna problem solve here, because logic isn't in the room. We're gonna wait till it comes down here. And we can say that to them, like, we got a lot to talk about, we gotta figure this out, absolutely. We will talk this out as soon as we're both calm, as soon as we're both able to, you know, have a conversation instead of yell and scream, right? And if you put yourself in that bucket too, it normalizes it for them that they're not the only one, right? Let them go first in the discussions. When things are really, really escalated, again, our frontal lobes are fully formed. We can tolerate the dysregulation of saying like, that's not what happened, that's not what I said, right? We can sit with that for a little bit, right? Let them go first. Let them tell their story of what their perspective is. Ask them questions about it. How'd you get from here to here? I'm confused. Where'd this go, right? And then once they get to the end of their story, that's when you can, you know, they'll start coming down, and that's when you can enter your perspective and say, okay, all right, I hear you. Can I share with you what my perspective was? Sometimes you're gonna get a no. That's okay, right? And then, you know, that might be an indicator saying like, okay, we'll talk about this later. We can come back to it. Right? We don't need to fix things right away. And that's going to leave them in this state of like lack of resolution. And that's okay. Not every problem's going to get fixed right away. We need to teach them how to sit with discomfort. Not every problem's going to be fixed all the time. So, you know, you can say to them like, okay, I've heard you. We're not ready to talk it out yet. I need to take some space. What are you going to do in the meantime? All right, how are we going to know when we're ready to have this talk? Right? Ideally, you've been taking the swimming lessons with them already, and you've talked about, okay, how do we know when it's okay to have a talk? Right? What does it feel like for you? What's your body telling you when your system is calm? And for us, what's our body saying that says we're ready to have that talk too? Right? Wait until the emotions come down before walking them through the options. All right? Make sense? It's gonna be uncomfortable, right? Okay. Oh, now what? There's not even a YouTube on there. Dang it. Hold, please. We can look at it in preview. Will you play nice? Okay, fingers crossed, nobody move. Okay. All right. So another landmine that we come across a lot is walking on eggshells, right? How many times are we nervous about like bringing something up or approaching something, and we're just gonna like, you know, avoid at all costs because at least right now it's calm. I do not want to poke that bear, right? Yeah. So what are we teaching the kid when we walk on eggshells? What we're teaching the kid is that I'm scared of your emotions. I'm uncomfortable with your emotions. It's not what we're saying, right? It's what their interpretation is of the situation, right? So this is really scary, right? And this is, again, that swimming lessons idea, that metaphor, right? If they don't think that you can hold on to their emotions, right? And so we're going to tiptoe around their emotions, right? They're going to think, you know, again, not here, but deep, right? My parents are uncomfortable with my emotions. So if they can't be comfortable with my emotions, how am I going to be comfortable with my emotions, right? So as painful as it is, when there is some calm, to go toward that, to go toward that discomfort and say, you know, give it a day, give it a couple days, right? To say, hey, you know what, can we talk about what happened at dinner last night? That didn't go the way I wanted it to. Can we talk about that? Right? It's showing them that we can go toward the thing that's uncomfortable and unpack it, because we're going to be here to help them figure it out together, right? We're not going to just try to say, like, no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's not fine, right? So wait until things are calm. Give it a day or two, you know, and go back to it. Go back to it, right? Because it's exhausting to walk on eggshells in the house, isn't it? Right? So as soon as I'm able, if there's any discomfort on my part, if I'm sensing any discomfort on my kid's part, when the dust is settled a little bit, we're going to have a chat, right? Because I don't want them to perceive that I can't go there, right? I want them to know that I can go there, so that when they've got big emotions, they know I can handle it. Make sense? Awesome. What's the time? Okay, we got a while. Okay. What is that? Okay. Landmine number 7. Not letting them fail. I have a t-shirt. Camp Failure. This is going to be my next business venture someday, where I'm going to open up a summer camp with adolescents, young adults, and their parents, and everybody's going to learn how to fail. Because there's this societal narrative right now that if one failure happens, or if somebody steps out of line, or something doesn't go according to plan, like looking at these really, really high-performing kids that are so phobic of any sort of failure, that it's crushing to them, right? And so what they're doing is they're not getting these failure opportunities. We have to fail. And we have to fail splendidly, as the t-shirt says. I gotta make some merch next time, right? To be able to, like, if we try to avoid failure at all costs, first of all, that's not realistic, right? Second of all, they're not gonna know how to pick themselves up and get resilience from failure when it really counts, right? When the stakes are really high. We need to have little failures along the way that teach us that, okay, I can come back from this. This stinks, and I can do it, right? So failure must come before resilience. Has anybody read Tribe of Mentors, that book? I forget the author's name. But what the author did was they went around and interviewed about 200 really, like, rock stars in their field, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Warren Buffett, and like high level people, right? And he asked them all the same kind of series of questions, hoping to kind of figure out, okay, what's the secret sauce in massive success in people, right? And so asked them about all kinds of different life experiences, what their perspectives were, how they viewed the world, blah, 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 blah. And what things really boiled down to for these massively successful, high-achieving people is early failure. Early failure, either early in their careers or as a young adult, they had something that went really sideways, right? And then they learned from those failures that, hey, this is a great opportunity. I have learned from this. Everything has completely imploded, and I'm building back from it, right? So if I can do that, you know, I've got the skills necessary to do it again, right? Does that make sense? Yep, we don't want to protect them from failure. We don't want to prevent them from falling down because they'll never learn how to pick themselves back up, all right? And I'd rather have them fail while they're still under my roof, right, in little ways, right, and help them to kind of learn, hey, what's your system telling you about this, right? All these things weave together, right? So to say, okay, yep, that didn't go according to plan. What did we learn, right? Once the emotions come down a little bit and we're able to, you know, look at some of the perspective of it, right? So when they try to avoid failure at all costs, trying to avoid the experience of pain only leads to suffering, okay? Pain is unavoidable. And I teach this to my kids. I teach this to my clients. This is actually a main concept in the therapy that I do with my clients, right? Especially with having a superpower. You're going to feel more pain than the typically wired person, right? You are. And you're going to feel more joy. And you're going to feel more hope and excitement and, you know, all these wonderful things and these painful things. You get kind of like a wider breadth of experience, right? One of my clients uses an analogy of the crayon boxes, right? So some people get, you know, an emotional bandwidth of, you know, when you go to the restaurant, they give those 3 little, you know, crayons to the kids, and that's their emotional bandwidth. My husband, right? And some of us get like the 164 pack of emotions, right? Myself, right? So we're going to feel more. And at the age that the kids are, as they're going through development, especially once they hit puberty, that middle school time, they've been thrown this 164 pack and they have no idea how to use it, right? So we want to teach them that they can go toward these uncomfortable things, right? Pain is going to happen in life, and you can figure out how to handle it, and I'm here to walk you through, right? If they hear a message of, nope, we shouldn't feel pain, right? We walk around with the broken toe, and we're like, no, I'm fine, right? That's going to lead to suffering. That's going to lead to suffering, right? Pain is unavoidable, suffering is an option. Right? So we can teach that to them. We can teach that to them, right? How to go toward the pain, right? A client of mine who was going into the military, I think it's in the Marines, they talk about embrace the suck. People heard that term before, that phrase? It's going to suck, right? And it's going to suck more if you try to, like, if you're angry about it or trying to resist it or trying to, you know, figure out a way to not feel it. So if you embrace it, it's going to suck less. And that's going to be, you know, puberty, right? Painful emotions, they're going to be there. And if we go toward them and embrace them, it's going to be less painful. All right? And that idea, again, of fragilizing, if the kids don't think, because of the messaging they've received from the world, right, that they can handle failing, if they've been bubble wrapped so much that they're like, oh, the world doesn't think that I can handle it when something goes wrong, I must not be able to handle it when something goes wrong, right? Now, they've kind of fragilized themselves at this point, and they're not going to feel confident enough to take those age-appropriate risks, right? Going off to college or starting a job out of school, those are risky things, right? And if they've internalized a message that they don't think they can handle the discomfort, they're gonna avoid those risks, right? So I'm doing this with my kids right now, and my clients too, by the way. They're all predominantly adolescents. You know, we stopped at Dunkin' Donuts on the way home from school today, and I gave my daughter the $5. I'm like, go order. And she's like, I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, yeah, figure it out. You got this, right? Give them those opportunities for those early risks, small, right? And they'll build up as time goes on. And then they're gonna be more confident that if they do screw it up, it's all right. They can get through it, right? Make sense? Yeah, okay. So, life is a giant science experiment. This is the perspective I give my clients. This is the perspective I give my own kids. Let's figure it out. Let's see what happens, right? There's no one right way to respond to a situation, to make a choice, right? A lot of kids, when they get that all or nothing thinking, adults too, and this is, classic example is me going to a restaurant trying to pick something off the menu. I'm like, what if I pick the wrong thing? Right? There is no wrong thing. Try it all out. Test it out. If it doesn't meet your expectations, great. You just found out some information. Right? So if we talk with them about how there are these opportunities to learn, if you make a choice and it doesn't go according to plan, awesome, you just learned. Right? To celebrate failure, to celebrate things going sideways. Right? This is like growth mindset, right? There are any teachers in the room, educators in the room? Growth mindset, right? Opportunity to learn. You just got more information because things didn't go the way you thought it was, right? I love this quote. Experience is simply the name we give to our mistakes. Deep, right? Yeah, Oscar Wilde. Yep. So, make lots of mistakes. Okay? Landmine number 8. Accidentally reinforcing ineffective behaviors. Now, the therapy that I do is deep in behaviorism, right? So again, teachers in the room, a lot of behaviorism, right? How do you navigate, how do you handle a classroom of 20 tiny humans? There has to be some structure, some order in some way, right? Remember when the kids were little? What did the teachers have set up in their rooms? There were, reward centers, right? You get enough jelly beans in the jar, you get a pizza party, right? Those types of things, right? Celebrations that my kids would have, the teachers had these, lines on the wall, and every kid's name was on there about where they were and how many books they read, and it was like positive reinforcement. Yay, everybody go, look at you, woohoo, right? So really trying to positively reinforce the behaviors we want to see, right? And at the core, all of us humans are behaviorists, right? When we see someone doing something we like, we give them some sort of positive reinforcement, right? Whether that's like a, hey, good job, whether it's even eye contact, right? There's this story of a college professor who liked to lecture while walking back and forth, right? They just walk back and forth as they were giving their lectures. It's just what they did. They'd been doing this for 25 years, lecturing and da-da-da-da. And their students got together because they were getting tennis neck and they were over it, right? So they decided, and some of them were in a psych class at the same time, they were going to use behaviorism to change that professor's behavior. Did not tell the professor, right? So what they did was, and this is just simple eye contact, right? While the professor was out at the corners of his pacing path there, everybody kind of looked away, or looked down, or kind of stared into space, right? Not eye contact. But when the professor was closer to the center of the room, everybody like leaned in, they were more engaged, they had more nonverbals, right? And so this went on. And within like, gosh, I think I heard like within 3 weeks of lectures, the professor was just standing in the center of the classroom giving the lecture, right? So just simple eye contact can influence other people's behaviors, right? So we want to be attentive to what are the behaviors of our kids that we are reinforcing, either in effective ways, right? So they all got potty trained, right? Hopefully. What were your methods, right? My kids had the M&Ms. Other kids got stickers, right? They had that little potty seat that when you went in it, it would sing to you, right? So that's a positive reinforcer, right? Something positive that they experienced as a result of the behavior that we wanted to see, right? So, you know, when they're little, we're all about this. Like, oh, good job. Oh, hey, you did the thing. You ate your vegetables. I'm so proud of you, right? It kind of falls off as they get older, right? Because some of this stuff is, you know, okay, like we should be there by now, in theory, right? For a lot of them, it's still, they're still looking for that positive reinforcement. And, you know, all of us as humans, we're looking for positive reinforcement, right? For some of us, our positive reinforcement comes as a paycheck, right? That's your reward for doing the behavior your boss wants to see or your company wants to see, right? Sometimes it's, you know, time with a friend. Sometimes it's you taking care of yourself, right? There's all kinds of ways that we still work in positive reinforcement in our relationships and in the, you know, just navigating day to day. What happens sometimes with kids with high sensitivity is we walk on eggshells. We don't want to, like, poke the bear. We don't want to escalate things, so we just kind of back off, right? And they aren't getting the positive reinforcement until things start to build, right? And then we attend. We pay attention. We're like, oh, what's going on, right? So my husband does this, right? So throwing him under the bus number 2. Ready? So my daughter has the high sensitivity superpower, right? And for her, it comes out in sometimes physical stuff, especially anxiety, right? When the first MCAS came around in 3rd grade, she was a mess, like belly troubles, right? Like feeling really nauseous. This is just how her body responds to high anxiety, right? So what my husband has taken to doing is to say, you're fine, you know, it's not really that bad, you can still go to school, you can still, you know, do the thing, right? So what has she learned? She learned that she's not getting the response that she's looking for kind of low-level discomfort, so what's she gonna do? She's gonna escalate it, right? And then, so I had to teach him behaviorism to say, listen, you're actually shaping her behavior into escalating her symptoms because you're not listening to her when she's describing something smaller, right? So that's behaviorism. Her, you know, it's not here for her, it's way deep in here, but she's not getting her needs met by keeping it small, so she's gonna ramp it up. Right? It's kind of like, you know, remember when they were like little and you go to Target and, you know, you're at the checkout aisle before self-checkout became a thing? And, you know, the M&Ms are at eye level for a 4-year-old, right? They do that on purpose, right? And so then, you know, they're like, Mom, can I have a thing? Mom, right? And they're all over it. And you're like, no. And they keep going, and you're finally like, okay, fine. Right? You can have them. What they learn, oh, I see head shaking right there. No, don't do it. don't give in, right? But what did they learn? We've all done it, right? We've all done it at least once. Sometimes it's survival mode for parents, right? So what did they learn? They learned that if they keep escalating their behavior, they will get what they want, right? There might be, frustration on the ride home, and they're like, well, but I still got my M&Ms, so I'm good, right? So we are accidentally reinforcing and creating a behavioral pattern with our kids that they have internalized that if I don't ramp it up, I'm not going to get my needs met, right? And when they ramp it up and we're like, okay, fine. Or even, with kids who are really struggling with safety issues, self-harming behaviors, all kinds of things like that, that's where things will go and people will pay attention, right? This is where a lot of kids get labeled, quote unquote, manipulative or attention seeking, right? Those words in my treatment program are not allowed because the kids have learned to get their needs met the best way they can, right? And sometimes that means ramping it up because they're not feeling like their needs are being met otherwise, right? So why would they, kind of try to tell people in calm, expressive ways if that hasn't been working? They're gonna go right to DEFCON 5 because they're feeling so much pain, so much emotion, they need this dealt with now. And even though people are upset with them, or people are frustrated, or people are whatever, they're getting a need met, right? So it sets up this pattern of us accidentally shaping them, and them definitely shaping us, right? So to pay attention to what are the things that we are attending to as parents, right? So positive reinforcement is the fastest way to change behaviors. Study after study after study. So find them doing the thing you want to see more of and provide a reward to that. Now, what you consider to be a reward and what they consider to be a reward might be two different things, right? So we're kind of the last generation of people who grew up without the smartphones, right? So to us still, eye contact releases serotonin, right? It's a positive reinforcer, right? So when we make eye contact with each other, we're releasing serotonin in each other's brains, right? So I'm releasing people's serotonin right now, right? It's kind of weird, a little bit, right? So, but for this younger generation, eye contact is really uncomfortable. It is not a positive reinforcer, right? So we need to, ask them, honestly, ask them, what's something that you would find rewarding if you were to do XYZ behavior and I were to reinforce you for it, right? I'll put a plan right on paper, right? Or you could do it kind of in a little more, under the radar kind of way. That works great too, right? So my son made a great values-based decision about some social interactions, and so we stopped at Dunkin' Donuts on the way home, right? I wanted to reward the behavior, right? It doesn't always have to be food, definitely shouldn't always be food, right? But just like hey, I see what you did there. Or, hey, what do you want for dinner? Or, hey, let's watch a movie tonight, you pick, right? There are all kinds of little positive reinforcements that we can do, either overtly and say hey, I want to reward your behavior, I liked what I saw there, or we could even do it covertly. And it's still just like the professor with the eye contact thing. He had no idea what was going on, right, until they revealed it. My students at my office in one of my groups tried to do that to me one time. Little stinkers, right? They wanted me to use, so I've got a whiteboard with different color markers there, and they got into cahoots, and they decided that they wanted me to reach for the green marker every time. So they told me this later. So I would be up there, and they would pay attention if I had the green marker in my hand, but not some of the other colors. I taught them too much. They used it against me. The student has become the teacher, right? So we really want to be very mindful about what behaviors we are reinforcing, okay? Now, when a big behavior happens, obviously we have to pay attention, right? So, but there are different ways that we can attend to things, right? Being intentional about what behaviors we are attending to, right? When they're making effective choices, when they're making values-based choices, when they're saying, hey, this says, I'm noticing what I'm feeling. We want to reinforce the heck out of that, right? When they're communicating, right? We want to use a lot of positive reinforcement and shaping. So shaping is, if we just wait for the behavior we want to see, like, it might be a while, right? So shaping is kind of like giving them the positive reinforcers as they kind of get closer to the behavior we want to see. So it's almost a little game of, remember playing like hot or cold, warmer, colder when we were kids, right? You're getting warmer, right? That's a shaping, right? So it says, ooh, something in this direction. Oh, it's something in this direction, right? So if you just kind of wait for them to pick the one seat that you want them to sit in, you're going to be here all night, right? But if you say, you're getting warmer, it'll take like a minute and a half max, right? So to be able to kind of give them the positive reinforcements as they get closer, right? Extinction is a thing that kind of ignore the behavior, right? Beware that there's going to be a behavior burst. It's going to get bigger before it settles, right? That's just how the brain works. When they're younger, or when it's like a kind of a safety issue and we can't just like not attend to it, we use a technique in DBT that's called withholding warmth. So yes, I'm present. Yes, I'm helping you with your crisis, and I'm not going to be really warm and fuzzy about it. I'm not going to be mean about it, right? But I'm going to be pretty matter of fact, right? So when you're making effective choices, I'm going to be like warm and embracing and supportive and validating and a cheerleader. Like, I'm going to go all out for that, right? And if there are some ineffective choices, I'm going to, kind of be a little more matter of fact, right? So that's what we call withholding warmth or extinction. Providing that structure for kids with expectations and flexibility, right? If they don't know what to expect, they're going to feel uncontained, right? So we do a lot of orienting at my office, and I do it unintentionally/intentionally at home about, like, here's what I expect right here. Here are the behaviors that I would really like to see out of you, and here's why, right? And something comes up, they're not able to do the thing. If we're able to talk about it, all right, I'm willing to negotiate, right? As long as we're having a communication about it, right? And also recognizing where they're reinforcing your behaviors, kind of like my devious little group members, that they were shaping my behaviors and I didn't know it. Your kids are doing it to you too, right? They're rewarding you when you do something that they want you to do, right? It goes both ways. So kind of take a step back, look at some of the patterns going on. Where's the reinforcer and how? And see if you can switch it up if it's something that's not a great pattern. Okay? Ooh, gotta wrap it up. Okay, we talked about the Columbo routine. Oh, perfect timing. Bonus skills. Playing dumb, my favorite thing. Love playing dumb, right? The royal we, like, we're in a tough spot right here. We really got to figure this out. Like, this is really painful. We can do this. Shows them that we're joined with them. We're here for them. We got their back. All right? Being behaviorally descriptive is a term we use a lot in therapy, but I kind of I work it into my house too, where I'm not going to say something like, well, you're just being a jerk, or like, I hate it when you do these things, right? I'm going to be behaviorally descriptive. I'm going to state when this is the choice you're making, when you're doing XYZ behavior, I feel hurt, or I feel sad, or, you know, what it is that you can actually identify. How could you describe it to somebody else? When you do this specific behavior, right, this is causing conflict. Or when you do this specific behavior, this is fantastic. I want to see more of that, right? So being as descriptive with them as you can, it reduces judgment, it reduces blame, because we're not just, you know, having these big, you know, oh, I hate it when you do that kind of thing, right? So it reduces that self-blame, that shame, and it helps them be more aware of what it is that you're looking for, right? And it's a behavior, it's not who they are, right? And a favorite statement of mine that I heard from one of the docs over at McLean, Blaze Gary, one of his favorite things in working with families is to say to them, sometimes there are going to be options. You can be right as the parent, or you can be effective. Yeah, sometimes you can't be both, right? So, you know, what's right for us is not necessarily going to be right for our kids and their experience. So this is one of those things about letting them fail, letting them figure it out for themselves, holding the space for when it does fail and they come back to us. That's okay, we're here, right? So, and we're giving them the faith that they can, we believe that they can go out and kind of try new things and take risks, right? And it is a scary world out there, and we trust that they can listen to themselves to navigate it. Okay, so next week, I love talking about validation skills. This is going to be very exciting. This is the #1 technique every parent needs to know. Different levels of validation, and you're going to walk out of here with a slide about literally what to say to validate your kids and what not to say that they are going to interpret as an invalidation. So those statements that you say to try to be supportive that suddenly they blow up might be on that list by accident, right? So what to say instead, whole big list. And we're gonna talk about why. And we're gonna figure out the video thing, because I've got videos to show next week, so stay tuned for that. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for staying with me.